Imagine having the life of your dreams. Not temporary cash and glory, but happiness and inner peace. Explore new ways to be a creator and take your own journey into greatness. Is it possible? What does it take to make that happen? It takes the person known for extreme results. He's called the cage breaker and the ultimate catalyst. Coming back from the brink of death and now crushing it for himself and his clients, this is Your Ultimate Life Podcast with Kellan Fluckiger.
Welcome to today's episode of Your Ultimate Life. We are on episode 519, and we are starting today with the first stone in the pillar of integrity. Integrity I placed in the middle of the 7 stones because you could consider it that's the central stone, not the foundation, but the middle around which everything else rotates. All of the pillars are super important. I mean, the first one, the pillar of choice, the pillar of language, all of those are really, really important. And, the pillar of truth, you could argue that every single one is just as essential, but integrity occupies at least a special place in my heart, and I put it fourth of 7 on purpose. We did yesterday a general introduction to this pillar and why it's so important. And today we're going to start with the first of the stones, and that is integrity is simple. Now, that's a declaration. Integrity is simple. Now, someone might take issue with that. They say, well, it's not easy at all. Well, I didn't say it was easy. Simple is unequal to easy. Simple is the opposite of complicated. It is not difficult to understand. So let's define integrity in a way, and there are probably lots of definitions. Integrity means something is what it seems to be. It is not integrity in building materials. We talked about that. Means it performs the purpose for which it was intended. The pillar holds up the building. There is integrity in the construction materials. Integrity in our lives means the same thing. It stands the stresses that are put on it. Integrity means to me, and in the context of building personal power to achieve your ultimate life and add good to the world, it means that you are what you seem to be. You do what you say. I use a phrase in my personal truth and commitment: I am integrity. I do what I say. I am who I seem, with no camouflage, duplicity, or guile. And I'd use those 3 words because they're just 3 ways of defining ways you can be deceived. If something in the grocery store, you buy it and it doesn't taste like it looks, it's confusing. And sometimes you might get frustrated or unhappy about that. There's one place I know that happens for me, and it's kind of funny. The other day, Joy and I went somewhere, and on the way home, we bought a burger, and the place advertised, grass-fed burgers and whatever. But anyway, in the line, it was a drive-through, and as in the drive-through, it has a picture of the burger you're buying, and of course, rarely does the device or the piece of food you get look like the picture. And so that advertisement has no integrity. It looks like one thing, and what you get is quite different. It doesn't look anywhere near as appetizing and appealing, and it tastes good, and I ate it, and that's fine. But that's a place, an example, a funny and easy and obvious example of lack of integrity. There is no consistency between the presentation of something and the actual thing itself. In your life, that is lack of integrity. So if you present yourself as a diligent hard worker and then you barely do enough to get by, that is lack of integrity. If you present yourself in a relationship as someone who listens and has compassion and is there to support and help people during difficult times, and then you can't be bothered, except if it suits your own ulterior motives, that's a lack of integrity. It's not hard to define or see what integrity should be. That's why I say that it is simple. Knowing whether something is in integrity with what you have claimed or what you believe is not a difficult thing to do. So it is simple. You can see and know right away if you're being in integrity. So, for example, if you agree to do something for someone and then you make a reason or an excuse not to do it, thinking, well, I was just too busy or I got sidetracked or whatever, that's not in integrity. We don't really have the words in our language anymore for commitment. And what I mean by that is really simple. When someone says, and this varies by person, I realize that, but often when someone says, yeah, I'll be there to whatever it is, what they mean without saying it is, if I remember, if I still feel like it, if I don't get a better offer and you don't do something to make me mad between now and then. And if any of those happens, if I don't remember, if I do get a better offer, if I still don't feel like it, or I don't feel like it, or if you do something that, makes me mad between now and then I don't do the thing, I don't come to where I said I was going to come, somehow you're just supposed to understand that. That's just implicit in the statement, yeah, I'll be there. Now, on the other hand, and you might disagree with that, but on the other hand, if someone really wants to commit to something or convince you that they'll be there, they add all kinds of extra words. No, I swear, really, no matter what, I promise. And they add a bunch of extra language because simply saying I'll be there is not enough. It's not adequate expression of a real commitment. Integrity is a simple thing to define as well. It means complete consistency with what you said, how you appear, or what was conveyed. That is what actually happens. That's what takes place. Then something is in integrity. And that same applies to building materials when you think about integrity in construction or in any other kind of thing. It does what it's supposed to do. It does what you figured it was going to do. It worked like you thought it would. If it doesn't, then it is not in integrity. And if there's some kind of guarantee and the person honors it, then they are in integrity because obviously they didn't intend for that failure to take place. So I want you to look at yourself. One of the ways we stay out of integrity is by making excuses. Well, this happened. Well, the weather turned bad. Well, I forgot. We all have alarms and phones, so forgetting is an act of neglect. It's not an excuse that really means anything. It simply means you had no intention of really being in integrity with something. It is easy to define and often difficult to live into. So I'm asking here as a challenge, because remember the whole point of this conversation about the pillar of integrity and the stones that make it up is to assess your life, me assess my life, to see where integrity is. And the reason is because real integrity is key to having that palace of power. You want to have power to make a difference in the world, to create that ultimate life of purpose, prosperity, and joy that you create by serving with your divine gifts. And the pillar of integrity is a critical, non-negotiable part of creating that power. One thing, like I said, that we do is we make it more complicated than it is, or we act like we can't really tell what being in integrity would mean in a given situation, and that's just not true. It is easy to understand. It is simple to know what real integrity would be. I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances where something urgent, emergency, some problem shows up, and you're prevented in a powerful and obvious way from doing something that you intended to do, that you committed to do. The answer there is also very simple. You do whatever you need to make arrangements. Number one, to let someone know what happened and why you can't do whatever you said you were going to do. And two, if possible, you make arrangements to have the effect complete that you intended to do. I'll give you an example. I was going to go help someone move. I couldn't do it, so I got someone else to go in my place. I completed the effect of having been there so the person wasn't left hanging. That would be a small example of integrity. If I say to someone, yeah, I'll help you move something on this day or move, your apartment or whatever it was. So it's not difficult to understand what integrity means. It is simple. Now, let's talk about the idea of complete consistency. Complete consistency. Some people feel like they can be one way at work and another way at home. Something I've had to work on is language. When I was working, and still am, but as I worked to change the effect of my attitude toward myself in my life, depression and not good enough and all the things that I've talked about so much, and wrote the book Tightrope of Depression, My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to Light, Love, and Life. And if you want to read my journey, then that's it. And volume 2 is Down from the Gallows. One of the things I've had to learn is consistency in language. Am I saying what I mean? And am I consistently showing up? And the example is my wife, my angel of a wife, sometimes says to me, you wouldn't say that to a client, or you wouldn't say that to someone at church. And that might be true. One way to handle that is a retort and to get back, and that escalates. Another way to handle that is to hear it and say, I wonder if that's true. I wonder if I'm not treating her, my most precious person, as nicely as I would someone else. And she usually says it if I say something that doesn't have the kindest tone or something like that. So he's saying, you wouldn't talk to someone else like that. And I have to listen, because if I'm going to be in integrity with a person who's full of love, who serves, and that's all my focus is to love and serve with my divine gifts to create my ultimate life, then I have to hear that and I say, wow, is that true? Is there a truth in that? And if there is, what do I need to do right this minute to fix it and move back in integrity? Now, even though it's simple, we all fail. We all fail in being exactly what we want to be, what we've committed to be, what we purport to be. There are always going to be inconsistencies. That's not an indictment and it's not a judgment. It's just a fact of being human. It's just a fact of being not perfect. And we're not, and we don't pretend to be. So when you fail, when you fall out of integrity, and you're not doing something you said you were going to do, or you're not acting in a way consistent with what you have purported to be, then fix it. Make some repair right then, right now. Get over the idea of being embarrassed or being frustrated or being looked down on or having to apologize or being wrong or any of those things. Just get over it. Right now, fix it. Because it is more important to be in integrity than it is to be right. One of the things that sometimes we get caught up in is, it's embarrassing to be wrong, to admit you're wrong, to admit you said it poorly, to admit you were unkind or anything else. And so we make that admission far more important than the integrity that should define our lives, especially if we want to have the kind of personal power that we're talking about. Okay, so the last piece of this integrity thing about it being simple is something I'm calling transparency. Someone should be able to see you and know who you are. Now, there's not a place, I'm not saying you need to tell everything about you. There are always going to be some things that some people don't need to know. It's not their business. Every single personal struggle you've been through, every mistake you've ever made, that's not in the public domain, nor should it be. This is not about being a complete open book where every piece of your life is splayed out for all to view and draw judgments on. It is an appropriate disclosure. Appropriate disclosure is a real principle. Everybody doesn't need to know everything in our relationships with each other. And just because you don't tell every person every single thing about your life doesn't mean you're not being transparent. Again, transparent is, are you being open so there is no deception. If a person hears and sees what they need to hear and see about you and from you, is everything that goes on in your relationship and the expectations and the commitments you had on both sides, are those met? Okay? That is what I mean by transparency. Transparency means there's no camouflage, you're not hiding stuff that's relevant to that situation and conversation. Okay, that is what I mean by transparency, and that's why it's completely different than somehow telling everybody everything about you. First of all, they don't need to know. Second, they're not interested. Third, something that happened a long time ago, even if it's something you did and you're ashamed of it, if you fixed it and it's over, continuing to cause ripples in your life because of something old and past, as long as it's not germane to that situation, is not helpful to your ongoing relationship and your ability to relate. So that is an area of discretion where you have to say, I am in integrity, and it is not either necessary or appropriate to be to disclose certain things. And that's important, and it is an important piece of integrity, and understanding where that boundary is also important. So this first stone is to understand that being in integrity is simple. It's not a complicated thing. You know when you should do something different. You know when you should say something different, talk differently, act differently in order to be the person that you have purported yourself to be. You've put yourself forward to be a certain way, to act a certain way, to do certain things. Doing those things is what constitutes integrity, and it is simple to know what that is. Keep that in mind as the first stone, building the pillar of integrity as you create your ultimate life.
Open your heart and this time around.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope that you take it deeply into your heart and decide for yourself how you can create anything you desire. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback and topic suggestions. Until tomorrow, this is Your Ultimate Life with host Kellan Fluckiger.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on